You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
So excited you could join me here today on our Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday. We're going to be covering the topic of the 9 silent low thyroid symptoms that spell disaster for your health. So what I want to do is, besides the blood work, besides the lab work, what you should start to be cognizant of in your everyday life that may be leading towards a lowered metabolism or a lowered thyroid, also called hypothyroidism, low thyroid, and when it has to do with the immune system as well, it's called Hashimoto's or Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So that's more of the autoimmune-based process. I'm going to get into a little bit of both of those today. But on the Cabral Concept, for the past 900 shows, we actually have done many thyroid-based podcasts. What I'd like to do is link up a few of those today in the show notes. So again, everyone can just go over to stephencabral.com/podcasts, and you'll be able to see all of the previous podcasts there, or specifically go to stephencabral.com/901. And on episode 901, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to link back to a couple of those thyroid-based shows. In particular, what I'd like to do is talk about how the adrenal glands are really a big mystery that a lot of people are missing in terms of how to actually fix the thyroid, because a lot of times the thyroid's not working as isolation. And then I also want to link up 2 additional shows: the 4 heavy metals or the 4 toxins that affect your thyroid, and also the 2 minerals that so many people are missing that have low thyroid today. So I want to go over all of those, but I want to link back because those are very in-depth shows. So I'd love for you to go back, check out those shows as well. And when I'm able to, I always do try to link back. So on today's show, though, I want to get right into it. We had a big show yesterday, a really big show on Ayurvedic medicine. I hope you got to tune into that. That was our 900th episode. And I said, going forward, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to give you and really provide the details, the information on Ayurvedic medicine through one show per week. Sometimes it will be on Tuesdays or Total Wellness Tuesday. Sometimes our Wellness Weight Loss Wednesday. And then oftentimes on our Training Thursday or Toxicity-based Thursday, if in Ayurveda we're talking about what exercise to do for which body type, and also the ama, the toxins. Well, of course, we'll talk about that from an Ayurvedic-based perspective as well. Such an amazing topic, such really a wealth of information that we get from Ayurvedic medicine and the thousands and thousands of documents and textbooks that we have translated from Sanskrit and from Ayurvedic-based medicine. So pretty amazing. Can't wait to continue to bring you more of that information. And for today's show, what I want to do, though, is I want to get deep. I want to go into what are some of the symptoms that I see most common in my practice that you might not always associate with low thyroid. Some of them you will, but not every single one. For example, the first one that I want to go through today, because we did a big show yesterday, so I want to make sure I keep this concise today, is one of the big ones that I see right now is increased worry, anxiety, and overwhelm. So when I see a lot of people in my practice, again, we haven't tested yet, so we don't know. I'll give you options for testing if you're interested. But if you don't know and you see yourselves just being a little bit more anxious, you see yourself feeling a little bit more overwhelmed, a little bit more irritable, a little bit more anxiety overall. Now, there could be multiple things, but a lot of people, they're suffering from more of that sympathetic nervous system-based dominance, that sympathetic nervous system-based stress, or they're really becoming depleted. They've been stressed for such a long time, and they're starting now to feel overwhelmed. That is one of those periods in which the thyroid starts to become lower and lower. Now, the TSH, that's the hard thing to know because it seems so strange. Like, if I have low thyroid, why do I have high TSH? Because that's a lot of times just what conventional medicine is testing for. And again, if you've listened to previous podcasts, you know the optimal range for TSH is actually 0.5 to 2, 2.5 at the very highest, but the range oftentimes goes up to 5. So if someone's at a 3, 3.5, we already know they're moving towards low thyroid. So important to have this tested. I would say every 6 to 12 months, maximum, and that will allow you to always catch these things before it starts to get to such a bigger dilemma, and really disastrous for your health because it's disastrous for your metabolism. We're going to get to all those things. I don't want to give it away. So the first symptom is this. It's increased worrying, anxiety, irritability, overwhelm. I see that so much in my practice. Now, that then permeates to almost every facet of your life, right? It affects your relationships. It affects your ability to do your work. If you're always anxious, if you're always worrying, that really just spreads out in your life. So important to keep that one in mind as well. The second one, absolutely, this is huge for work, huge for family, and huge for relationships, is memory loss or brain fog. So many people, as they're getting into their later 30s, 40s, or 50s or so, are saying, why is my memory starting to go? Is this early Alzheimer's? No. A lot of times it's not. It truly isn't. What happens is, again, when we get that overwhelmed, we get that stressed, and when we're starting to move down from in the adrenal-based resistance, we're moving more towards the adrenal-based fatigue, the thyroid is, again, moving along with it. It's one of the first things to go before you even drop into adrenal-based fatigue is actually hypothyroidism. Why would that happen? Why does this happen? The reason is this, is that your thyroid really regulates energy and metabolism, right? So your body's down-regulating energy, down-regulating metabolism, and that's a very smart thing to do on your body's part because it thinks it's in a survival-based situation. So if it believes it's in a survival-based situation, it's going to start to lower your caloric-based demand. That means it's going to lower the amount of calories you need to meet the same weight. The other thing it's going to do is really shut down overall energy. And that's because it's trying to conserve energy so that it does not burn as much calories so that you stay alive. All these things are normal. And you have to understand that brain power and brain fog, mental fatigue is a big part of it, right? Because you need mental energy. It's so important to look at that. It's just not just the body, but also the mind that goes along with it. So don't always jump to the conclusion that you are getting dementia or Alzheimer's or one of these things, whether you're in your 50s, 60s, or beyond. A lot of times, low thyroid. All you have to do is test that number. We'll give you multiple ways to test it with your PCP, your functional medicine doctor, or with us, right through a send-away lab right at home. So we'll give you all the options at the end, but what's important is to understand the symptoms first. Because if you're not in your head to like half of these symptoms, you really should get those adrenal glands checked, get the thyroid base checked, get the estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, testosterone, to look at the symphony of hormones and how they affect each other. That's what a lot of people are missing. I'll try to tie that together towards the end as well. Constipation. I wanted to write this one down. Okay, a lot of people right now, again, a lot of people in my practice, we're looking at what are the root causes of constipation. Well, we could have dehydration. We could have, again, stress, that's kind of sluggish bowel motility, lack of fiber, lack of produce in the diet. For a lot of people following a lower carb or keto-based diet, there's not as much, again, movement. So what we're looking at is many symptoms, but when we get that drop in metabolic rate, we get a slowing of that peristaltic movement as well. Again, we're looking at an overall slowing of all metabolic symptoms. A lot of people, when they think of low thyroid, they're only thinking of weight gain, or they're thinking kind of like sluggish metabolism is and the ability to lose weight. But that's not what the metabolism is. That's only one part of it. Metabolic rate really has to do with the synthesis as well of minerals and vitamins and everything through the cells and the body's ability to actually produce weight. So when you get in that low metabolic rate, I'm not going to really get into this today. When you are hypothyroid, when you do have Hashimoto's, what oftentimes we're looking at is really a slower detox capacity as well. You see people gain weight, but you gain weight for multiple reasons. One is your body literally has slowed its metabolic process, so you can't take in as many calories as you could before. That's why I worry about people going on these low carb and for too long, or keto diets for too long, that it can be really detrimental, especially for women. Really, I see that all the time in my practice, and I wish more people really looked into that research as well, because this is kind of a new area, a new territory as well. So that constipation can be a big one as well. I would say it also goes along with the skin, right? We get a lot of drier skin and low thyroid. And again, I guess that could be one more symptom. That could be number 10 today. That's because the body's ability, again, to even use water, to hold that water becomes less. All right. So number four, the fourth symptom is sleep disturbance. I wanted to write this one down. Here's what I see. I want to get more into the science on this. A lot of people, they're able to fall asleep with low thyroid, but they end up waking up multiple times, somewhere between midnight and 4 a.m. It's interesting because when we look at traditional Chinese medicine, we're looking, okay, liver, there's liver-based issues, and that might make sense because they're having a more difficult time detoxifying. There's imbalances within hormones, namely estrogen. But when we look at thyroid, because this is a thyroid-based show today, is that when we're looking at thyroid, what are we looking at? TSH to T4 to T3. That's essentially how the thyroid is working, meaning like thyroid stimulating hormone, that's what TSH is, producing something called T4, then regulating T3 inside the cells, meaning like the cells themselves are going to be able to create something called T3. So when we give thyroid-based medication in conventional medicine, we're actually giving most likely, not always, but most likely T4. Now that's supposed to then help convert into the cell into T3. That doesn't always happen. And again, you don't know that unless you're lab testing. That's the problem. You can be giving someone T4 and you check their TSH and their TSH is still high. Okay, fine. That does happen all the time. So what do? Well, typical specialist will crank up the dose of T4. Well, what happens then? What happens then is you could start to get hyperthyroid-based symptoms. But if you saw one of my previous shows, those people with higher T4 numbers, again, you have to test this, actually have greater chance for certain types of disease. One of them may be cancer. So what happens is the body's getting the T4 that it needs, but it's not converting to T3. And again, I will link back as to why on one of my previous thyroid-based shows. Just know that if your body is cranking TSH, that's going to happen predominantly between that, well, not predominantly, but the peak time is around midnight. So it's interesting to look at that. So if your body's struggling to make thyroid hormone or it's struggling to convert to T3 inside the cells, you will get the signal. Your hypothalamus will tell your pituitary gland to stimulate that thyroid to make more T4. But again, if it's not converting, you're going to get a higher output of TSH. That's why it's so important to lab test. Because if your level is above a 2.5 and you test your T4 and it's really not in the optimal range, at least a 1 there. And then same with your T3 as well. I mean, I would like somewhere around a 3 there as well. But again, it depends on the lab. The number shouldn't matter. It's the optimal range that we're looking for, okay? Really, really important to look at. But that's why sleep disturbance may be a big one that you see as well. Thinning hair. We've talked about this before. That's one of the symptoms. But really thinning hair over the course of a couple years, sure. But oftentimes it just starts to come on within months. That's what I want to talk about. We get a thinning of the eyebrows, the last third of the eyebrow. We also get a thinning of the overall head of hair. So it's interesting because we're not talking about male pattern baldness or some type of androgen-based increase, which might be more like the back crown of the head. But when we're looking at lower thyroid, we're actually looking at overall thinning of the hair. So the hair is a little more thin. It's a little bit more brittle, but it's not coming in as thick as it once did. This can be a sign of an underactive thyroid. Losing your hair, just literally falling out. Now that can be a sign of high cortisol output as well as high thyroid output. But again, today's not a high thyroid show, but I do want you to know that losing the hair can definitely be a high cortisol-based output that, of course, again, you can check for on a thyroid adrenal hormone test. So that was number 5. Number 6 is this. For a lot of women, and they're getting irregular periods, okay? So they're getting irregular periods where the period's starting to be longer, sometimes it's shorter, or the period becomes a little bit more heavier, their menstrual cycle is just changing. When we look at that, we can say, okay, your thyroid might actually not be producing enough hormone. And when we look at that overall, again, in conjunction with cortisol, and we look at conjunction with estrogen and testosterone and progesterone, we can paint this picture. We can see how there might be a dysregulated menstrual cycle, meaning that, okay, if the luteal phase is shorter, meaning that, let's say you have a normal follicular-based phase, we're looking at that as somewhere around 12 to 15 days, but we only have, let's say, somewhere around 9 days of a luteal-based phase of the cycle, we can actually track that. We can actually look at what that looks like and how it might be stopped prematurely. And again, oftentimes that is because of additional sympathetic nervous system stress, just meaning fight or flight, additional stress in your life, lack of sleep, and the body really trying hard to keep itself regulated. But at that point, again, when you go into that high level of stress, eventually the body starts to become less efficient. It's going to start to slow thyroid to lower metabolic rate. That can absolutely affect your menstrual cycle. So something to look at. And again, what do? Well, we recommend typically for women testing right around 5 to 7 days before their normal day 1 of menstruation. And you're going to do that again with a thyroid adrenal hormone-based test. Really important to look at. Let me add one more tip. The reason is this, that a lot of women dealing with fertility-based issues right now are also dealing with low thyroid. There's no coincidence. In order to really have a healthy, happy pregnancy, we want to make sure that cortisol levels are balanced, progesterone are balanced together, meaning estrogen's higher in the first half of the cycle and then lower in the second half, and then progesterone's lower in the first half and higher in the second half. So again, these are things that are very trackable. We want to have normal levels of testosterone. We have so many levels, or I should say, so many women in our practice with higher levels of testosterone. And those higher levels of testosterone are showing sometimes the stress, but a lot of times what we're really looking at is women come in with dysregulated menstrual cycles, with PCOS-based symptoms, with sometimes facial hair growth, and oftentimes acne. And when we look at that and we see the higher testosterone, we know that we need to help them from a natural-based perspective to lower that androgen output. And we can do that, of course, naturally. All right, so really important if you're dealing with fertility-based issues as well, is that you look at overall thyroid. Number 7 is this, feeling cold, especially the hands or feet, right? This is different than Raynaud's-based syndrome or any of those things. We're actually looking specifically at poor circulation. And for me, this really is not that big a surprise. Because when I say, okay, someone's downregulating energy production, downregulating metabolism, well, that automatically downregulates circulation, takes energy to pump that blood through the body. Of course, that, again, means the liver's not going to filter blood as quickly, or it's not going to filter as many toxins. It's important to start to look at, again, the total picture. Why would this person be gaining weight? Well, poor detoxification. Why would this person look puffier, more swollen? Again, poor detoxification. Why would they have poor detoxification? Well, kind of less circulation through the body. Why would they have less circulation? Well, thyroid's becoming lower. They want to exercise less because they don't have the energy output. All of these things begin to make sense when you look at it as a total system of the body, everything being interconnected. So I would say along the same lines as feeling cold, even again in like those spring and fall months where like you shouldn't feel cold yet, right? Is that not sweating. I see so many people in my practice and they just literally don't sweat and can't really sweat. And to me, it's a huge sign that the body's already in a fatigue-based state. It's in what we call the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's really in more of that deep healing-based state. It's stuck there. It's trying to heal. And a lot of times this is lowered metabolic rate. Now your body, again, is doing that from a survival-based perspective, all right? It's slowing everything down so that hopefully you slow down so that you get your rest and you can begin to heal your body. That's just one kind of feel-safe. And it does that in order to protect you. Remember, your body is never messing up. It's just not. There are dysregulated systems. When you figure out why the body's dysregulated, how it began, and where it's at now, well, you can go about repairing that. You don't want to force the body to do anything it's not ready to do. You are sacrificing long-term results for short-term gains if you do that, like pumping the thyroid full of hormone if it simply doesn't have the minerals that it needs, or if it's full of toxins like cadmium and bromine and mercury. And like, again, a lot of those things that I talk about, and it will link up on the show as well today. So StephenCabral.com/901 for previous thyroid shows as well. All right, number 8 is this, unexplained weight gain with the same calorie input or the same exercise routine. So again, I've kind of talked about this up until now, right? So you kind of get the gist of it. And that's why everything should build on everything, meaning that you'll notice that everything is connected here. I didn't name a symptom that was out of the ordinary. All of these pretty much go together. These are real low metabolic, real low metabolism-based symptoms. And since your metabolism is essentially dictated by the thyroid, it makes sense. You are not able to burn body fat and keep the weight off as you were in the past. And you're not, because your body has slowed metabolic rate. And it's doing that now, again, in that survival-based state to keep you alive longer. That's what it believes. You're in a survival-based state. And so that's the tricky part. It's like, okay, well, you used to be able to eat 2,000 calories a day. And then it went to 1,800. Now you're at 1,400 a day. And if you go above that, you start to gain weight. Well, should you go down to 1,200? Should you go down to 1,000? Well, what happens when you're at 1,000? Should you only eat 800 calories? That's why a lot of these people are eating such a little amount of food. And the problem is that it's really difficult to reach all of your micro. I mean, a lot of people meet their macros because the macros can be made up of whatever you want them to be, right? That doesn't always mean it's healthy, but you can make it fit your macros, right? But here's a bigger thing. Do you meet your micros? Now, your micros are all of your B vitamins, your B12, your folate. We're looking at your B6. We're looking at all the B vitamins, vitamin E, vitamin C. We're looking at all of your amino acids. We're looking at all of your minerals, such as zinc and copper. All of these matter, right? Well, if you're only eating a small amount of food, it's really hard to get all of those vitamins and nutrients. And the reason is that we need to eat more of those plant foods than we ever have before, because the soil does not have as many nutrients, so the plants themselves can't soak it up out of the soil itself. So we need to eat more plant-based foods. And of course, you can do things like use the daily nutritional support shake. You can use the daily fruit and vegetable blend like I do. You can use your daily probiotic support. Like all those things are great. They're great, yes. But really, on top of that, we should be getting the majority of it from whole food, meaning like we should be able to get it from our food. But the problem is if you keep dipping your calories, because if you eat more, you'll gain weight. I get it. Like I understand that, but you're missing out now on all of these phytonutrients from the plant-based food that you should be eating. So here's the problem. We don't want you to gain weight by adding more calories or more nutrition, but we know that you need to in order to get all of your micronutrients for the day so that your body doesn't literally turn into a catabolic, I was going to say mess, but get into a catabolic state where you start to lose muscle mass, and then that even further exacerbates metabolism. So now you really can't burn the body fat. You have to keep eating less and less and less. It's a vicious cycle that so many people are in right now. This is what you have to do. You have to heal the adrenals, of course, but you need to heal that thyroid. You need to give that thyroid what it needs in order to spark the metabolism. Now, the metabolism's been sparked. We can begin to slowly increase those calories, 100 calories a week, 200 calories a week, 300 calories a week, I should say per week, per day per week. And then what we're allowed to do is start to add back in more food, but still lose weight at the same rate. That's what we're looking to do. Again, you can do this. Like you can absolutely do this. And I'm going to explain more in just a moment. Actually, those were all the 9 that I had. And so the other one that I added in was the dry skin that we talked about as well. So all of these are important. These are what we call the silent symptoms of low thyroid. And the reason is that a lot of people never attribute them to low thyroid. They attribute things like worry to just simple stress in life, right? Like, but we don't talk about the increased worry. Like, okay, yeah, maybe you've been worrying, but now why is it at that next level? Same thing with brain fog. Well, it could be a lot of different things, but certainly tied to the low thyroid. Constipation, again, is it a lack of fiber? Is that a possibility? Too much of dairy, too much of certain base foods? Is it from a lack of water, dehydration? Sleep disturbance, that could be many things as well. But a lot of people even get a second wind around 11 o'clock or so at night. Remember, it's that thyroid also kicking in. That's the pitta time of the day as well. Thinning hair, sure, could be androgen-based, could be conversion from testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, but maybe it's a low thyroid. Difficulty or irregularity of menstrual cycles. Could be estrogen to progesterone, certainly, but also could be a lack of thyroid-based hormones. Same with infertility. The dry skin we spoke about, which could be, again, dehydration, poor fat absorption, or it could also be the low thyroid. Feeling cold, not sweating very much, we chatted about that, and the unexplained weight gain, even though you're keeping the food pretty much the same and you're keeping the exercise pretty much the same. We can look at that. So very much important to look at all of these items because remember, much of the time, your PCP, your MD, they're not going to explain all of these different symptoms to you. I just wanted you to know them. I want you to know them. If you're a health practitioner, of course, in your practice, personal trainer, you can explain this to clients as well that are kind of stuck at a plateau. All health coaches, all doctors, acupuncturists, naturopaths that are listening to the show, we can use this with everyone that we work with. But even if you're not in the health field, which again, most people listening to the Cabral concept are not, you're able to share this with friends, family members, your children, whoever it might be, right? Your parents. And then you can get them to start to see that there's a connection between all of these symptoms and potentially an imbalance in hormones. My highest recommendation, again, I'm going to give you 3 recommendations, okay? The first is this. For most people who believe they have a non-autoimmune condition, meaning like they don't believe they have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, okay? They don't believe they have rheumatoid arthritis, anything like that. They believe that they've been stressed lately, that they're starting to get a little bit more run down, not as much energy production, overall feeling overwhelmed, anxious, irritable, lower libido, just not as much vitality for life, not as much ambition, any one of those things. I cannot stress to you enough how amazing the thyroid adrenal hormone test is. That was the very first test I ran along with the hair tissue mineral analysis now over 20 years ago. It gave me the data that I needed to finally say there's something wrong with me. It's not all in my head. When I got the results, like literally I was falling out of my chair. Someone for the very first time could see what was going on inside my body at a much deeper subclinical based level. And I could now prove it like, good, it's not all in my head. I knew it wasn't. I knew there was something wrong with me. And I take the results of the low cortisol to my PCP. And again, you don't have to do this. You can choose to do whatever you want. But I was just basically like, hey, look at this. And he said, oh, okay, well, maybe there's something to this. And that's when they finally tested me for Addison's disease. 2 years of suffering. And again, all I needed to do, and I talked about this yesterday, it's like we all need this information. That's why you have to pay it forward. You have to share it with other people. I ran this thyroid adrenal hormone test, and it showed how low my levels of cortisol output was. Besides that, my DHEA had plummeted. My testosterone had plummeted. That's why I felt literally like a zero. That was it. There was nothing left to my body. Well, for this, it will show you again. It will show you specifically what your cortisol levels look like throughout the day. So important to look at. Cortisol is a great thing in terms of as an anti-inflammatory, but too much of it is that stress hormone and can really burn our body out. Too much of that stress hormone is not good. It can be catabolic and actually then rebound and create more inflammation in the body as well. So really important to look at that. Cortisol, that test also looks at DHEA and testosterone to see what level of fatigue or how healthy you are. And then it looks at estrogen and progesterone. Again, if you're a female and you still have a menstrual-based cycle, we want you to take that about 5 days or so. You get day one of menstruation. On the same test, you're going to look at your TSH. So that's great. Everyone typically runs that. But you're also going to look at T4 and T3. So now we get to see how the body is converting from TSH to T4 to T3. So important. And then we look at TPO antibodies. And that gets to look at, okay, is this a low thyroid-based issue because of potentially low minerals or toxicity, or is this an actual autoimmune-based process? And the TPO antibodies will help show that as well. Then, again, this test is phenomenal. It will look at vitamin D levels. So you can test your vitamin D. I mean, again, low thyroid can be because of lower vitamin D. That's one basis point for it. Not the only thing, but one basis point. And another symptom as well with acne and inability to lose weight, and with PCOS-based symptoms, I could go on, are dysregulated insulin and hemoglobin A1C, basically blood sugar. And this test looks at that. So it's called the weight loss test as well, but really it's just called a thyroid adrenal hormone test. It's for men, it's for women, it's for people who don't need to lose weight and for people who need to lose weight. It's to look at all of the hormones in your body. That's really one of my top labs that we run in my private practice. And again, anyone can run that. You don't need to ask your doctor for permission. That's the thing that I wanted to give back. I had no idea how I was going to do this 15 plus years ago. But I said, how great would it be to not have to ask your doctor which labs you could run? Because it's sometimes a little intimidating, and sometimes they make you feel terrible about yourself. Like, oh, why do you want to run that? What's the point? It's not going to show anything anyways. I was put down so many times, and I felt so belittled. But now, giving people that ability, again, a lot of functional medicine doctors are happy to run that for you as long as you can kind of make a case for it. We just want to be able to give you the ability to do that on your own. And again, you can get that lab, the link for it, just by going to stephencabral.com/901. I will link everything up right there. And then the additional lab I was going to tell you about is the complete thyroid lab. Now, this is for people who believe there's a toxicity that's causing their low thyroid-based issues, or it is a low mineral, and they want to figure out why they have the low thyroid. This is the lab I recommend taking if you already do have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So if you already have rheumatoid or Hashimoto's, and you know that you have low thyroid, this is the lab to run. And the reason is that, yes, you'll get to look at your TSH, T4, T3, but you're also going to get to look at those minerals that might be low, causing the weak conversion of thyroid in the first place and lack of thyroid. And it's also going to look at the additional toxins in the body that could potentially be hurting your thyroid, which is why you're not able to produce as much thyroid hormone. So that's called the complete thyroid. I'll link up the two. You can obviously see which one is best for you. To make it easy in my practice, people always ask me, which one should I do? I recommend most people go with the thyroid adrenal hormone because it's a complete picture of all your hormones. But if you already have the Hashimoto's, then you would run the complete thyroid. Again, if you have Hashimoto's, you can still run the thyroid adrenal hormone, but you can also look at why you have those toxins through the complete thyroid. Now, for everyone else, if they're not ready to get into functional medicine lab testing yet, or they didn't have these specific symptoms, you could simply continue to run your TSH every time you get your blood work done with your PCP at least once a year. And that lab range, again, should be between 0.5 and 2, ideally. 2.5 at the very highest. Hopefully today's show was helpful. If it was, as always, please do feel free to share this show with anyone you believe it could serve. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Cabral Concept. I'll speak with you tomorrow. Before you go, I wanted to ask you this question. What if I could teach you in just a couple of hours how to transform your thyroid, hormones, adrenal, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, weight loss, energy, mood, brain, pregnancy, anti-aging, or many other health-related issues? After 20 years in private practice, after seeing and overseeing 250,000 client appointments, I sincerely feel I have the real-world data and have found the answer you've been searching for. So what I've done is spent hundreds of hours of my own time refining what you need to know in order to uncover your underlying root cause health issues and then begin to rebalance the body and bring it back to a state of robust health and wellness. I'm going to teach you exactly what I do in my private practice so you can understand how you got here and now what you need to do in order to heal. You'll receive all of the important success checklists, protocols, and even ways to customize it to make the program fit your busy life. And you'll get all of this at a fraction of the price. Let me save you the time, money, energy, stress, and frustration of not knowing what to do next. Instead of reading dozens of books on the topic and seeing multiple practitioners, I will condense everything that you need to know in just a few hours of video tutorials that you can watch and listen to anywhere. Together, we will make this healing process an enjoyable one that you can take with you for the rest of your life. I wish you all of the best of health and happiness, and I hope to be able to guide you on your healing journey through my Health Results Accelerators. Simply choose the health imbalance you're currently suffering from, and by the end of today, you'll know what went wrong and how to get well again. I guarantee it. For details, head over now to stephencabral.com/courses.